A dash of mystery, a sparkle of magic, and all things cozy. Join your host, Elle Hartford, for Cozy Alchemy, a proud member of the Authors on the Air network. Hello and welcome to Cozy Alchemy, the podcast all about cozy academic books. I'm Elle, and my guest today is Leslie René, author of Maggie and Arthur's Magic Moment. We will get to that in just a minute, but first, Leslie is going to start us off with a game of two truths and a lie.
Yes, hi everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Okay, so my two truths and a lie. The first one is that I have lived in Virginia my entire life. My second one is I once sent a book to the International Space Station. And my third one is that I just got back from a trip to Shanghai.
Oh, these are fun. Okay, I like the elements of travel here. I'm really hoping that the second one is true. I'm gonna guess that the first one is the lie, that you've always lived in Virginia.
Yes, that's right. I have lived in Virginia for most of my life, but I lived in New York City for a while, and I also lived in North Carolina. But the other two are true. I have shipped a book to the International Space Station, and I did just get back from a trip to Shanghai.
That is so cool. Okay, we're gonna go in order. How does one ship a book to the International Space Station?
So my first job out of college was actually working in publishing, and I worked in sales, and I worked in this division of sales called special markets, which is like all the weird things. And we got this call one day from a woman who said, like, I'm the wife of an astronaut, and he's going to the International Space Station, and we really need to buy a calendar. So I used to work for Workman Publishing, which is the inventor of the page-a-day calendar. And so this astronaut had a routine where he would do a page-a-day calendar every day. It was like he had to do the Sudoku page-a-day calendar every day. The problem was, yes, very cute. The problem was this was like April or May, and he was going to be at the space station over the new year. So we needed to get the calendar like months in advance to get it to him, because they ship everything up to the space station in like one or two goes. It's not, like there's very limited times to do it. So we actually, I was like, guys, we have to make this happen. I don't care how we do it, but like we have to make this happen. So we drop shipped a single sample of the Sudoku calendar for the following year, 6 months early, to Houston so it could go up to the space station, and he had his calendar for the whole year. So I guess it was a little bit of a lie because it wasn't a book, it was a calendar. I'm sorry.
But a page-a-day calendar, though, like those are like book size, I feel like.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. Okay. So then how was your trip to Shanghai?
It was great. It was lovely. We travel out there pretty regularly because my husband has family who live there. So we had a really nice time. We got to take our kids and do all the fun kid stuff in Shanghai. And now we're back, and we've been back for a little while, and we're all readjusted to the time. So even better.
But yeah, which is especially good for then people like putting you on podcasts and putting you on the spot.
Yes, we've been back for a while, so no worries. I'm fully adjusted back to the regular time.
Nice. Well, welcome back. And so your book, Maggie and Arthur's Magic Moment, comes out in July. Can you tell us a little about it to get us started?
Yeah, absolutely. So Maggie and Arthur's Magic Moment is a contemporary romantasy. So it's a fantasy, but it has kind of trappings of our modern world. And it is a romance between two grumpy professors who work at a magical college, who are forced to share a small office and work together to banish the dangerous spell that's threatening their school. And they don't like each other very much, but what they don't know is that they may have already kissed once before at a masquerade festival earlier in the year. So
I love the addition of the masquerade festival, and we will definitely get to that. But as we were talking, like right before we hit record, like the academic setting hits close to home for me. I know I've mentioned it before on the podcast. But what was your inspiration for embracing the university setting? Did you really love writing it? Were there challenges? Like, tell us about it.
Yeah, all of the above. I loved school growing up and loved college and actually went to grad school for a while, but I myself am a grad school dropout.
Oh man.
I know. So I am a grad school dropout, but I I just really love that setting, and I am really drawn to lifelong learners and also public servants. So, like working for government organizations and things like that. So this idea of like
Yeah.
of giving back to the community in that way. And so I also just think that like the idea of a magical university and like all of the different things that they would study there was really cool and interesting. And the book actually started with the kind of kernel of an idea. My undergraduate degree was in Spanish and linguistics. And so I wanted to write a magic system that was at least partially based on translation and word magic. And, if you had to translate everything from an ancient language that you didn't speak anymore, what would the challenges with that be? And so that was kind of the kernel of the idea that the book grew from. And then, but it was really important to me to get the academia part right. And
Mm.
I think what was also really important to me was like to talk about a version of academia that maybe isn't as common in romantasy or in fantasy fiction. So I think a lot of times we think of like this kind of like lauded institution with like, the smartest minds of a generation. And Hawthorne College isn't really that. Hawthorne College is like the college that everybody goes to. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's
Just down the
more.
road.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's
Yeah.
the college just down the road that like all the local high school kids go to, and you don't really know what you're gonna do, but you'll figure it out when you get there. Um, in many ways, that was, kind of the college experience that I had,
Mm.
and the college experience that a lot of people I grew up with had, and it was still great, and there's still like a lot of magic to be found in that experience.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to write about that and reflect have that version of academia reflected in a book because
Nice.
I think that it's a little bit more common than the other one.
Yes. Sheer numbers would
Right.
attest.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm going to out my husband for being ABD. Like he's working on his PhD, but we're at the dissertation stage. So like I completely get uh grad school is daunting.
Yes.
Like, yeah, it's intense. So I really appreciate that you went for like the slightly less intense version in the book. That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and the book is definitely in conversation with that, with like this,
Mm.
like people get thrown into grad school, and this was certainly my experience. Um like I said, like have a lifelong love of learning and just wanted to push that to the limit, but like was kind of
Mm.
thrown into grad school without any kind of help of getting through that. Like I didn't know anybody who had done it. I didn't know anybody
Yeah.
who like went on to become a professor, for example. And
Mm.
so the book is definitely in conversation with that, like with the way that academia can sometimes be really challenging, especially if you didn't kind of grow up around it or like always have the expectation that that's where you would go. And so
Yeah.
I certainly don't regret dropping out of grad school. It was the right decision for me at the time.
Yeah.
But there was always that kind of like, what if? And
Right.
when it came to writing this book, I definitely have a lot of friends who are in academia and who, went on to become professors. And so I asked a lot of them, like, okay, listen, like you have to read this and make sure I get it right. Because like I'm not fully in, I was in it for a while, but I'm not in it now. So like, is this,
Yeah.
is there some truth behind it? So.
Well, the great fun with the fantasy setting is we can always tweak it just a little bit and be like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, well, this is how it is in my world.
Right, right. There have
Yeah.
definitely been some things where I've gotten
Yeah.
like really worked up about like the order of how things are done and like spent hours on like I can't remember the exact subreddit title, but it's like, our grad school or something, or like,
Yeah.
and I'm like on there, and I'm like, wait a minute. There's a reason you set this not in our world. Like you can
Yeah.
make up the rules. Like let's take a step back.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, kind of building on that though, because we could probably talk about that for a long time. But while I love the premise, it was, I must admit, it was the addition of alchemy that like really caught my attention. So I was really curious about just like how you chose your characters' fields of expertise and like what that
Yeah.
research was like.
Yeah, so my background professionally is in science writing, so
Mm.
I kind of a winding journey from publishing from Spanish to
Yeah.
publishing and Spanish and linguistics to publishing to eventually science writing.
There was
Um,
Sudoku in there, so
there was Sudoku in there for a while. I know whenever
makes
I talk about
sense.
my career, people are like, How did you get?" Um, but science writing, it has kind of become my second passion after writing fiction. And I think what is really that really informed a lot of the work that I did in Maggie and Arthur's Magic Moment, um,
Mm.
because I was working a lot on press releases about like batteries and like
Okay.
catalysts and things that like as a science writer I just have to understand enough to write about them, but I don't like fully
Right.
comprehend, and I'm like this is like magic to me basically. Like a lot of this.
Yeah.
But I think like for me like this idea that if there was going to be a university um with where people were studying magic, it like parts of it there it has to be challenging and it has to be hard and
Mm.
it has to be worth the time and effort to sit down and study it. So when I was thinking of the different, like what would make this kind of harder, and so, thinking about like alchemy and transformation and kind of pulling in that almost scientific element to it,
Yeah.
with just like that magical bent.
Mm.
So making it scientific, and then they have to do math and calculations and draw these like really precise runes and then also say an incantation. So like I'm really sorry to everybody in this world. The magic I made for you is very hard. I'm sorry.
But you have a point. You have a point that, there's a
Yeah.
cost to it, to everything,
Yeah.
right?
There's a cost
Yeah.
to it, and I think that like if the world I think at one point I kind of described it like, everybody can flip on a light switch or maybe like change out the outlets in their house and do some like basic electrical work, but not everybody's an electrician. That's kind of how the magic system works. So like everybody can do a little bit and everybody can say a spell or make a rune or do the calculations, but not everybody is an expert in it.
Right. Right. That makes sense. Yeah. And I just have to say, like, I really love that you're coming at it from like the scientific angle. That's so cool. I we had talked briefly my history my background is history, but I have alchemy in my stories as well. Obviously it's very different, a different setting, but that's, to me, that's one of the joys of it, is that we have a perception culturally today that alchemy is like magic or maybe like woo woo new age or like whatever, but historically speaking it was so scientific.
Right, and it's
Yeah.
time. It was the science and like trying to figure
Yeah.
out how these things could work. And so I definitely pulled on, I'm not, I pulled on some of that, like some of those,
Mm.
the equipment is mentioned briefly and some of the kind of historical leanings of alchemy. It is definitely its own thing in the book, but I pulled from some of that too.
Nice. Thank you for indulging my like obsession every time
Always.
I see. Yeah.
I love that.
All right, but back to what is also like one of the major fun things about your book. So you have a masked party, which is just fun on its own, but then it sets up this like the magic with the masks and like this kind of ongoing theme of masks. And like even right off the bat, like in the book blurb, we have this lovely quote, like much of what Maggie thinks about Arthur is merely a mask, or I think she knows about him. Can you talk about like your approach to the masquerade and all that? Like where did that come from?
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite things to remind myself when I'm writing a first draft is that the first draft of Maggie and Arthur's Magic Moment didn't have the masks in it at all. So there was still this element of her trying to find him, but it wasn't related to the masks at all. And so the original idea kind of got scrapped and I had to get rid of it. And so I was really thinking of like, well, what is a way that these two could know something about each other without realizing that they know it about each other, like without
Yeah.
realizing who they know it about. And
Yeah.
I've always loved the trope of a magical masquerade, like I of a masquerade ball in general. Like I just think that's so fun and romantic and like, oh my gosh, this person that you have a connection with and you don't know who they are. Um,
Yeah.
so writing the masks ended up being very fun. They're not pulled from any kind of tradition, but like the rest of the Beltane Festival certainly is pulled from some historical
Mm.
traditions.
Mm-hmm.
So just this idea of like they have this festival every year and they're kind of trying to change it up all the time to make it modern and fun. And so this year they added the masks and everybody's kind of like, what is this? Like, what's going
Right.
on? Um, so but then I think it really fed into the themes really well with Arthur's own journey throughout the book, where, he's kind of been put in this position of both like fame and his academic success, where he feels like people don't really see the real him. And so through his relationship with Maggie over the course of the book, like part of their connection is that she does start to see the real him. So, she kind of gets to peek behind that mask that he has frankly put up, um, for his, to get through his academic career in a sense. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. It's so much fun like seeing that unfold. Like I agree. It's a very fun trope.
And I think I also wanted to play with some of the tropes of like, um, when one person knows and the other one doesn't, there's not that imbalance for very long in the story. They both kind of find out at similar times. And it was really important to me to like how that unfolded. And so
Mm.
I really love the way that it unfolds, and I think it works really well for their characters too. So I don't want to spoil anything, but
Yeah, yeah. No spoilers. No spoilers. But just kind of like more broadly about like the romance in general. I think it was your author bio like made a great point about like the ways fantasy and romance like often go together. Um, what makes them so complementary, do you think?
well, that's a really good question. I think for me, when one of the things that I really love about both about fantasy and romance separately is that it gives us a framework to see our real world kind of through a different lens. So with fantasy, you have the addition of magic, and then with romance, you kind of have this, you know, almost idealized version of like what falling in love
Right.
and dealing with your own baggage to overcome that and accept this love that has come to you. Um, and I think that they just both offer this new way of looking at things, and a
Mm.
new way to talk about the real parts of our society or our interpersonal interactions, um, through that story arc.
Mm.
So, and I feel like I'm getting a little convoluted here, but like the way that like just a new way of looking at things. Like with fantasy, you have the addition of magic and you have the addition of whatever else you have. The trappings of fantasy to talk about real issues, or real character growth. And then in romance, it's the same thing. You have this romance to talk about, at the end of the day, romance is a character driven story. And that through the process of falling in love, you're uncovering more and more about these characters and how they're
Right.
changing over time. So I think that's one way. Like it's just like a way to kind of unravel more about our own world and our own characters.
I love that. I love that. And I agree, like, especially with fantasy, sometimes it's easier because um, like, obviously with character driven stuff and with romance, it's very personal. But when you put it in a fantasy world, it feels a little less personal in some ways, and it's a little easier, I think, for people to look at
Yeah.
it. And yeah. Yeah.
I think also one of the things that I really love about fantasy romance, and one of the things that I really love about writing fantasy romance, is the external motivation that exists for the characters.
Mm.
So you can really play with what that external motivation is and like make it as
Yeah.
big or as small as you want, like with more um kind of darker romantasy or darker academic fantasy, like it's, maybe something as big as a war or,
Right.
overthrowing a king, whatever it might be, and then like
Yeah.
in our case in my case at least, it's like a spell gone wrong. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I really I love that piece of romantasy of being able to like pull in the magic to be that kind of external force on the characters and their
Yeah.
relationship.
It's a very good point, also. All right. So this is your debut novel. Yay. Uh, what has your publishing journey been like? I know you mentioned your career path has been a little bit all over.
Just as windy, I think, in many
Mm.
ways, fast in some ways and slow in others. But, I always had the dream of publishing a book and writing a book. And in college, I actually studied poetry and thought I wanted to be a poet. And there's a little bit of that in Maggie and Arthur.
Ah.
There is a poem in there. That it's just at the end though, so if you're one of those people who likes to skip poems, don't worry, you don't have to read it. I know there's that faction of fantasy readers that's like, I always skip the songs, I skip the poems. Like, don't worry, we put it in an appendix. You don't have to read it if you don't want to. Um, but I struggled for a really long time with finding a project that I was very passionate about and wanted to publish. And honestly, working in publishing kind of made me take a step back for a little while. And so I worked in publishing for about 3 years and then moved to do other things in my career. And in that time, I kind of was like, you know what, I didn't write for a very long time. I wrote, I
Mm.
wrote a little bit. I had a blog. I wrote nonfiction or personal essays and things like that, but I didn't write any fiction.
Mm.
And then, you know, I had kids, and when you have kids, your time gets crunched down and condensed. And I think it's also a really clarifying experience in the sense of like, okay, I have 2 hours a day. What do I want to be doing in that 2 hours? And,
Fair.
if you're lucky, you get 2 hours to yourself a day, right? And so it was really clarifying for me that I'm like, oh, like, no, I really want to write, and that's what I want to do. And it wasn't even just fiction writing, but I also in my day to day, I was like, I want to write full time. Um, and so I set the goal professionally first. Like, I want to make my job writing. And then in about a year, I had a job as a science writer, which was
Cool.
like, I found to be like a calling essentially. And I love that so much, and it's been really great. And then once I kind of was doing that for about a year, I was like, okay, now it's time to do the other thing.
Time to
And
level up.
yeah. And I think, I think for a lot of people, the pandemic was also a clarifying experience.
Mm.
And what was clarifying about it for me was I spent a lot of time trying to write literary fiction and, kind of heavier climate fiction. And all of it always had an
Oh.
element of the fantastic, but it was really grounded in these really serious topics.
Mm.
And then when the pandemic hit, I didn't read any of that. Like, I read the fantasy romance books I loved as a kid, and I read romance novels, and I read like really fun, propulsive fantasy that like wasn't serious at all. And I was like, okay, if I'm going through what is possibly one of the most stressful experiences of my life, because I had a 2-year-old at the time and a full-time
Oh my
job and
goodness.
plenty
Yeah.
of family working in healthcare that I was worried about every day.
Ooh.
if I'm going through one of the most stressful experiences of my life and all I want to do is read the fun things, then the fun things have a lot of value. That
Yeah.
and why isn't that what I'm writing? And so once I had that, like, which looking back on it now, it seems very obvious, right? Like, why wouldn't you write the fun things that you love to read, right?
Mm.
But once I made that decision and once I kind of had that thought and that realization, it was actually very easy to finish a book. And so,
Nice.
yeah, I wrote my first book, like first completed book. I'd written a ton before that, but first time where I really sat down from start to finish and, you know, knew that I was going to finish the book. I wrote that, queried it, didn't go anywhere. Um, it had some bites, but it didn't make it out of querying. And then while I was waiting for responses on that one, and while I was pregnant with my second son, or I guess it was right after he was born, I wrote Maggie and Arthur's Magic Moment. And
I see.
I just kind of had a sense as I was writing it. I was like, I think this is something, I think it's good.
Ah,
And so after that, the process went pretty fast. So once it was done, I queried it pretty much right away. And then, we still had plenty of rejections, still got plenty of no's, but got that yes and worked with my agent to send it on sub. And again, still got plenty of rejections, but found my incredible editor and so happy to be at Berkeley.
nice. I can't resist perhaps a poor pun that it was also a magic moment for you. And that, like,
It was. Yeah. No, it really
that's so
was.
cool. I love that. We've had a couple other authors, I feel like, express something similar of like when they were working on the book, they just knew, they had that feeling that it's going to come together.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, on that note, what is next for you?
Yes, so I am working on book two.
Yay.
I'm in edits with that right now, so that is going to be coming out sometime in 2027, and it is another book set in the same world as Maggie and Arthur's Magic Moment. So I am really in the thick of editing right now, and I'm really excited for how it's all coming together. So look
Nice.
out for the announcement for that.
Very cool. Okay, now I ask everybody this, but what advice would you give to yourself if you could go back and talk to yourself when you were just starting out?
That's a really good question. Um, I think honestly, I had so much fear at the beginning that the book would turn out exactly like in the sense that I wouldn't finish it. Like I was so afraid that I wouldn't finish it because in the past I had, there were so many times when I hadn't.
Mm.
So I wish I could go back in time and just let her know, like, you're gonna finish it, and then you'll finish another one, and then you'll finish another one after that, and like you've cracked the code, you've figured it out, you can relax. Um,
I love
so
that.
yeah, I think that's what
Huh.
I'd tell her.
Just a little bit of reassurance. Nice. All right. Now we'll get to our final question in just a minute. First, I will have like the link to your website and stuff like that in the show notes. But is there anywhere in particular that you would like people to find you online?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Threads probably more than I should be, so my handle on there is Leslie Should Be Writing. Would love for you
Nice.
to follow along the journey there. If anybody is local to the DC and Virginia, Maryland area, we're getting ready to start uh, announcing events for the book, so definitely keep an eye out for
Yeah.
that.
Fun.
And yeah, that's probably the best way to get in touch with me is there or my website. So.
Nice. Very cool. Okay. We're going to end on a high note. What is one win that you've had in the past week? It could be anything.
Oh my gosh, one win. Okay, well, you know what? Saturday was Indie Bookstore Day, and
True.
I had the best day. Like a friend of
Aw,
mine and I went to four bookstores. The local bookstores had this great passport where you could get stamps. We got like gifts at every bookstore we went to. We got some arcs.
nice.
I bought like way too many books, way too many books. Um, and just really had such a great time. It was the loveliest day. The weather was perfect. Like, truly just such a fun day. So, that is my win.
That's so cool. That's an excellent, very bookish win. I
Yeah,
love that.
it definitely
Nice.
was.
Well, Leslie, thank you so much for being here.
My gosh, thank you so much for having me. This was the loveliest conversation. I had such a good time. Thank you.
Yay! I'm glad. That's what we aim for. Like I said, I will have like your link and things in the show notes, so listeners definitely check that out. And for listeners, I will talk to you next time. Cozy Alchemy is brought to you by Authors on the Air, and our theme music is by Cyberwave Orchestra. For everything else, blame Elle. You can find her online at lhartford.com.